Hello dear students, you are welcome in this video. Students, we are making a series on multiple choice questions, and in the last video we have covered multiple choice questions on literary theory part first, and in that particular video we covered multiple choice questions on structuralism, post-structuralism or deconstruction, theory before theory. So in this video we are going to cover the next part in literary theory. So this is part second in literary theory. So let's start multiple choice questions, and always students, you need to take a pen and paper and note down all the questions and their answers. I will tell you, first I will read the question, then I will read the four options given there, and after that I will tell the answer of that particular question. So you need to take pen and paper and write down, for example, question number 1. In front of question number 1, just write down your answer. Choose an option among these four options, and then at the end you can calculate your score, and please comment your score in the comment section. I appreciate your comment. So let's start. This is multiple choice questions on literary theory part 2, and in this part we are going to cover post-structuralism, postmodernism, psychoanalytic criticism and feminism. Actually we have covered some portion of post-structuralism or deconstruction in the last video. You can go and watch that last video. You can solve the multiple choice questions given there. So let's start with the first question. Here we have very first question before us. Who said there is nothing outside of the text? And you have options: A. Jacques Lacan, B. Jacques Derrida, C. Henry James, and D. William Emerson. Student, please write down question number 1, and in front of question number 1 your answer, your option. So choose one option, then I will tell you the answer. So please note down the answer of this question: A, B, C or D. Now the answer of this question, or the correct option, we have B. Jacques Derrida says there is nothing outside of the text, and this is said in the book called Of Grammatology. Of Grammatology is a very important book in this series of literary criticism, and this has been translated by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak of Grammatology in English, and again it has become very famous. So Jacques Derrida actually talks about there is nothing outside of the text. So remember this. Next question, question number 2. Prominently the use of fragmented forms which are called as eclectic is a characteristic of, and you have options: A. Structuralism, B. Post-structuralism, C. Modernism, and D. Deconstruction. So please choose your option. Once again I will read the question. Prominently the use of fragmented forms is a characteristic of. So these fragmented forms are called as eclectic forms. So choose among these four options, and the correct option we have C. Modernism. So modernism, fragmented forms is the basic characteristic of modernism. If you look at the works of T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, you will find the stories are fragmented. Different types of characters they have given in the form of fragmentation. So no one-to-one relation you find in these stories or in these characters, or the forms. Also, if you look at the form of Ulysses, you will find this fragmentedness. If you find the form of the wasteland, again you will get the same characteristics. So this is the characteristic of modernism. Let's move to the next question. Question number 3. An influential and important paper in postmodernism, Modernity, an Incomplete Project, is written by. Who wrote the paper, research paper called Modernity, an Incomplete Project? And you have options: A. Immanuel Kant, B. John Locke, C. Voltaire, and D. Eugene Habermas. So please pay attention to the pronunciation of this fourth French, actually he is the French theorist Eugene Habermas. The spelling is J-U-R-G-E-N and Habermas. So it is pronounced as Eugen Habermas. So this is Eugen Habermas. Please choose your correct option among these four options A, B, C or D, and the correct option you will find is D, Eugen Habermas. The paper is composed in 1980. Let's move to the next question. Question number 4. Who is the author of the essay answering the question, what is postmodernism? And you have options A, Francois Lyotard, B, John Baudrillard, C, Eugen Habermas, and D, Michel Foucault. So please note down your answer. Here we have an essay called Answering the Question, What is Postmodernism? So who wrote this essay? We have four options A, B, C and D, and the correct option here we have A, Francois Lyotard. He composed this essay in 1982. Once again, I will tell you this pronunciation of all these scholars. Very first we have Francois Lyotard, second John Baudrillard. Though the spelling of this scholar is Jean, it is called as John. And next we have Baudrillard. It is, if you pronounce it as Baudrillard, but in French it is pronounced as Baudrillard, John Baudrillard. You can pronounce in the same way. Again we have Eugen Habermas and Michel Foucault. This is Michel Foucault. Let's move to the next question. Question number 5. The loss of the real or hyperreality is a basic feature of postmodernism is stated by Dash in his essay Simulacra and Simulations. And we have options A, Francois Lyotard, B, Jean Baudrillard or John Baudrillard, C, Eugen Habermas and D, Michel Foucault. So who said that the loss of the real or hyperreality is the basic feature of postmodernism? Please choose among these four options, and the correct option here we have B, John Baudrillard. Said it in 1992 in his essay called Simulacra and Simulations. There may be a question asked on this portion that who wrote Simulacra and Simulations. So you need to understand it is composed by John Baudrillard. He also is a French theorist. Next, number 6, we have, according to Peter Barry, who is or who are the landmark or landmarks in postmodernism? If you read again Theory Before Theory by Peter Barry, you will understand. So I recommend you, please you read this Theory Before Theory. Next we have four options: A, Eugen Habermas, B, John Lyotard and C, John Baudrillard, and D, all of the above. And the correct option here we have, these all are considered as the landmarks in postmodernism: Eugen Habermas, John Lyotard and John Baudrillard. So the answer is D, all of the above. They are significant theorists, significant authors in postmodernism. Number 7, psychoanalytic criticism is based on dash form of mental therapy. Here we have options A, Sigmund Freud's, B, Henry James, C, William James and D, T.S. Eliot's. So please note down the correct option. And students, the correct option is Sigmund Freud's form of mental therapy. So psychoanalytic criticism is highly based on Sigmund Freud's form of mental therapy. Next question, question number 8. Who talks about the concept of unconscious in psychoanalysis, or whose theory of psychoanalysis is based on the notion of unconscious? We have four options: A, F.D. Morris, B, Peter Barry, C, I.A. Richards and D, Sigmund Freud. So who talks about the concept of unconscious? If you remember, you can answer. Please choose your correct option, and the correct answer is D, Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud generally talks about unconscious. His whole theory of psychoanalysis is based on unconscious. So he talks about unconscious, conscious or subconscious mind and the working of those faculties of mind in psychoanalysis. So psychoanalysis is basically a therapy, and it is applied in criticism as psychoanalytic criticism. So you need to understand Sigmund Freud, his theory is related to unconscious, then you will understand this psychoanalytic criticism. We have made a video on the same psychoanalytic criticism. You can go and check the playlist called Understanding Criticism and Theory. You will find a very special video on psychoanalytic criticism. Let's move to the next question. Question number 9. Ego and superego, the major terms in psychoanalysis roughly corresponds to. So these terms corresponds to, you have options: A, unconscious, B, consciousness, C, conscience, and D, all of the above. And the correct option is all of the above. Now id represents unconscious, ego represents consciousness, and superego represents conscience. So these three terms corresponds. Actually all these terms are given again by Sigmund Freud. Next question, question number 10. Who wrote the Psychopathology of Everyday Life? Who wrote this text called Psychopathology of Everyday Life? We have options: A, William James, B, Anna Freud, C, Sigmund Freud, and D, Henry James. Please choose your option, and the correct option is C. Sigmund Freud composed this text called Psychopathology of Everyday Life, and from this text we have his theory of psychoanalysis or psychoanalytic criticism. It's very basic text in psychoanalysis. Next question, question number 11. Who said there is always a return of repressed? So this is also important in psychoanalytic criticism because there are theories that once your emotions or your wishes are repressed, they find a wall, they find something to get out. And what is that? Here we have question: who said there is always a return of repressed? And we have here options: A, Sigmund Freud, B, Anna Freud, C, Henry James, and D, Jacques Lacan. So who says this? And the correct option is A, Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud again talks about the repressed emotions, repressed wishes in the human mind, and he said that these repressed emotions or wishes come out in different forms, and there is one form he suggested, that dream is the form in which your repressed desires, repressed emotions come out in your dream. Let's move to the next question, question number 12. Who proposed the theory called mirror stage? We have options: A, Jacques Lacan, B, Roman Jakobson, C, Sigmund Freud, and D, William James. So please note down your answer. Who proposed the theory called mirror stage? A, Jacques Lacan, B, Roman Jakobson, C, Sigmund Freud, and D, William James. And the correct option is Jacques Lacan. So Jacques Lacan proposed this theory called mirror stage. Let's move to the next question, question number 13. Who published the seminars called Ecrits? These seminars are very important in psychoanalytic criticism or in psychoanalysis because it is published after the theory of Sigmund Freud, and what Sigmund Freud says is extended in these seminars called Ecrits. So here we have question: who composed these seminars called Ecrits? Actually these were the seminars given in different institutions, but later they were composed in a book form and called as Ecrits. So we have options: A, Sigmund Freud, B, Roman Jakobson, C, Jacques Lacan, and D, none of the above. Choose your answer, and the correct option here we have C, Jacques Lacan composed these seminars called as Ecrits in the form of book. Question number 14. The roots of today's feminist criticism are found in. So this question is based on feminism. So where do we find the roots of this feminism? We have options: A, men's movement of 1960s, B, men writers of 1960s, C, women's movement of 1960s, and D, none of the above. So please note down your answer, and the correct option we have C, women's movement of 1960s. The roots of feminist criticism is found in women's movement of 1960s. Next question, question number 15. Who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women, published in 1792? So you can go in the 18th century and you will find the beginning of this feminism or women's movement, and we have a very important text in the feminism called A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which is published in 1792. Who composed this text? We have options: A. Virginia Woolf, B. Frederick Engels, C. Ferdinand de Saussure, and D. Mary Wollstonecraft. So please note down your answer, and the correct option here we have Mary Wollstonecraft, D. So Mary Wollstonecraft composed this very important text in feminism. Next question, question number 16. Virginia Woolf composed a feminist text called A. Women and Labor, B. A Room of One's Own, C. The Origin of the Family, D. The Subjection of Women. So which is the text composed by Virginia Woolf? Please note down your option, and correct option is B. A Room of One's Own, published in 1929. Virginia Woolf's another text in feminism, which is also very important, and she talks about different forms of feminism, how women are suppressed. Actually it is given in A Room of One's Own. If you read, you will understand the very mindset of Virginia Woolf regarding women and how she talks about women and their rights. So this also an important text in feminism. Next question, question number 17. Who wrote The Subjection of Women in 1869 and The Origin of the Family in 1884? Here we have two texts, and who composed these two texts? These texts are again important in the field of feminism. A. Mary Wollstonecraft, B. John Stuart Mill, C. Frederick Engels, and D. B and C. So who composed these two texts? Please note down your option, and correct option here we have D, means The Subjection of Women is composed by John Stuart Mill in 1869 and The Origin of the Family composed by Frederick Engels in 1884. Please remember this. These texts also are significant because these texts are written by male writers, and this is from the perspective of male writers looking at the feminism or looking at the women's rights, the women's status in the society, and the women's position, very position in the society. So you can understand through these male writers. Earlier there were female writers who talks about feminism and women's rights. Here we have male writers. So please remember this. Next question, question number 18. Who proposed the distinction between feminist, female and feminine as a political position, a matter of biology, and a set of culturally defined characters? So who has given this distinction? We have options: A. Virginia Woolf, B. Toril Moy, C. John Stuart Mill, and D. None of the above. So here we have feminism. Here we have three terms in feminism. Feminist means a political position, females means a matter of biology, and feminine is a set of culturally defined characteristics. Who distinguished this? Please note down your option, and the correct option here we have Toril Moy, B. The feminist reader. In the feminist reader, she distinguishes these three terms. She says that these three terms are different: feminist, female and feminine, and she has given the meaning of all these three terms in the form of feminist means a political position, female means a matter of biology, and feminine means a set of culturally defined characteristics. So this will help us to understand feminism in a clear way, in a clear manner. So if you go deep in the feminism, you will have different types of things in the feminism like this, and it is stated by Toril Moy in his text called The Feminist Reader. Question number 19. Who coined the term gynocritics from androtexts, books by men, and gynotexts, books by women? We have options: A. Mary Wollstonecraft, B. Elaine Showalter, C. Virginia Woolf, and D. Toril Moy. So who coined this term called gynocritics? please note down correct option, and the correct option we have B. Elaine Showalter talks about gynocritics, and she has taken this term from androtexts, means books written by men, and gynotexts means books written by women, and she has coined this term called gynocritics. This is also an important stream in feminism or feminist criticism, gynocritics. She has given a particular or attributed a particular thing to these texts called gynocritics, gynotexts. And dear students, here we have the last question in this series, question number 20. Who detects the three phases: feminine phase 1840 to 80, feminist phase 1880 to 1920, and female phase 1920 onwards in the history of women's writing? So these three phases in the history of women's writing are very important. And who detects these three phases? We have options: A. Elaine Showalter, B. Toril Moi, C. Mary Wollstonecraft, and D. Sandra Gilbert. Please note down correct option, and the correct option again A. Elaine Showalter. So Elaine Showalter divides the three phases of women's writing. So you have here first phase from 1840 to 80, second phase from 1880 to 1920, and the last phase or third phase from 1920 onwards. So these three phases also help us to understand the development of the movement of women's writing or the feminist criticism. So dear students, these are the 20 questions. So now again we have set a criteria for qualification, or if you want to qualify this test, it is a small test, you need to score 50%. We have attributed 2 marks to each multiple choice question, means there are 40 marks. Out of 40 marks you need to score 20 marks. So please, now you can calculate your score and you can comment your score below in the comment section. So dear students, please like this video, share this video among your friends, and subscribe to Literature Simply, and also press the bell notification icon so that you can get notifications of these kinds of videos. So thank you very much for this video. Let's meet in the next video.